Welcome to A State of Mind. This is Julian Royce. I'm recording this here in my office where I work as a therapist, meditation teacher, and facilitator, and I'm excited to bring you a new episode because I truly believe in the power of conversations to change lives. Please check out the show notes for each episode to learn more about the topics covered and our guests, and check out the affiliate links of all our sponsors. That is a wonderful way to support this podcast, as well as visiting our Patreon page to support the podcast directly. I want to share with you about kanna. Kanna is an amazing herb from South Africa. The scientific name is Psychedelic Dosing, and it's been used for centuries to support mood, emotional openness, and connection. I've been working with a company called Ka Empathogenics here in Boulder, and I have an affiliate link below so you can order it and support the podcast. And I just want to share a little bit more about it. There's been some amazing scientific studies showing that people taking kanna actually score higher in compassion and empathy and openness, and it's a mood uplifter. It helps you feel better, almost like drinking a strong cup of dark chocolate cacao might be something similar, but it's different than that. It has its own unique feeling. One cautionary note is it's not recommended if you're taking SSRIs or other drugs that act on your serotogenic system, and you should talk to your healthcare provider. So this isn't healthcare advice or medical advice, but kanna is legal and it is powerful and potent, and it can be a helpful ally in your path. So if you're interested in exploring it more, check out the link below, and I look forward to seeing you there. Another way you can support this podcast and improve your overall health and wellness is through Shilajit. Shilajit is a traditional mineral-rich resin. It's been used for thousands of years in the Himalayas, and it's really incredible. I have access to really high-quality Shilajit that's been tested and made sure that it doesn't have any harmful additives, nothing like that. It's from the Ural Mountains of Russia, and you can message me at the link below in the podcast show notes if you're interested. And I'll just share a little bit about Shilajit. It's actually formed from ancient plant matter that's been compressed over centuries. It's very high in fulvic acid and trace minerals. It helps support mitochondrial function, energy production, and nutrient absorption. And a lot of people today are using it for vitality, endurance, cognitive clarity, overall resilience. It can taste a little gnarly, but I like to drink it in the morning with warm water, which is a traditional way to take it. And if you haven't tried it out, try it out. It's definitely been a game changer for me, and I think it's a great way to start off your day. Another way you can support this podcast as well as your health and wellness is to check out the blue light blocking glasses from EMR Tech. There's an affiliate link below in the show notes, and they're making really high quality glasses that I think are also pretty fashionable. There's different glasses for during the day, for during the sunset, or for during the evening. And I think this is a simple thing that we could all start doing more that can really improve your health. It'll improve your sleep at night if you wear them during the day and at night. There's research showing that blue light suppresses melatonin. It disrupts our circadian rhythm, negatively impacting our sleep quality, our recovery, and our nervous system regulation. And so as more and more of us are spending more time on screens, having things like good blue light blocking glasses that you actually like to wear, I think can be really helpful. So check it out below. Let me know if you have any questions. So I'm here today with Pierre Bouchard. Pierre, thanks for being on the podcast.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I'm now in this beautiful podcast studio, and the first time we recorded a podcast was maybe 4 or 5 years ago at my house, and it's great to reconnect and have you back on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and so I think we actually met on a meditation retreat a long time ago. I was trying to remember when we first met, and you're now also working as a therapist. How would you introduce yourself to folks?
Great. Yeah. Well, I think I believe that is how we met. Yeah. Probably a Reggie Ray retreat.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reggie was a great meditation teacher in this organization called Dharma Ocean. And he had a big impact on me in terms of how I meditate and approach it, really emphasizing the body and embodiment. And I remember doing a few retreats with him, and I remember thinking, like, this man is obsessed with the body. He would talk about the body forever. And really powerful meditation practices to ground you in the body, create a sense of safety. What I would now use the word attunement, attuning with yourself. And it's a powerful way to meditate and to access more of the full intelligence throughout your system. Unfortunately, Reggie Ray had a bit of a scandal, not from money abuse or sexual abuse, but he was accused of spiritual abuse by some of his students. But he was a very powerful meditation teacher. I think he's still teaching.
Yeah, I believe
And
so.
I really respected his practice. And I could see a bit of, maybe part of it came from like, he, as more of an old school teacher, and maybe he would be kind of harsh with people at times. Maybe that's part of where some of those complaints came from. But I don't know all those details, but I do appreciate what he offered in terms of meditation teaching. I never went into what's called the Vajrayana level with him, the tantric level. And I think that's where things got maybe a little more, those allegations of abuse came out of, unfortunately.
Yeah, his the somatic work really bringing somatics and embodiment to a meditation practice was hugely influential for me as well.
Nice.
I'm a somatic, I think of myself as a somatic psychotherapist. I was trained in contemplative psychotherapy at Naropa University, so heavy Buddhist background. And but yeah, I would say that I mostly operate as a somatic therapist. And along the way on that journey, deepening into a more sort of experiential meditation practice, and as well as getting into psychedelic facilitation in a number of different ways.
Yeah, and I'm excited to talk with you about that. How would you speak to somatic? If someone's listening, they're like, what is a somatic therapist? What does that mean?
Yeah. Well, I would say that we're having an experience, and that's how we meet the world, is through through experiencing it, and that happens in this body. And that I would say typical therapy, the channels that it uses to make sense of that are the channel of thinking. What are my thoughts about an experience? And emotions. What emotions come up when I think about the past or remember something or get in a fight with my spouse or whatever. And somatic therapy is simply adding the information that happens through the body as well to all of that. So, and the truth, right, is that like there's a whole universe of sensation and experience happening in the body that is related to our emotional life and our history. And that when we learn how to pay attention to that, I think it just makes our life more vivid and interesting and rich. But I would say that it also can break us out of the what can get a little narrow and small in terms of just thinking of healing is happening at the thought level or the emotion level.
Yeah, totally. I think part of it, when I think about it, when I reflect on it, we can be stuck, living our life from the neck up, right? Living our life in our head. And a lot of deep healing, it's not just a thought process. It's not just intellectual. The intellectual process, our thinking process can be so powerful. It's taken us over as a culture, as a society. Many of us are living in our thoughts, right? And we have this sense of ourselves as kind of living or being located behind our eyes in our head. And we're seeing the world from that place. And to be able to really drop into and be in our body, be an embodied presence in the world, to listen to the body. Like one thing I'll share with people that I work with is, can we drop in and feel and listen to our gut? We have 100 million neurons or something in our gut. A lot of our serotonin and dopamine is created in our gut. And then there's our heart. And then there's the brain in our skull. And I think a lot of scientists now are speaking of these as like 3 distinct brains, so to speak. So there's that piece. And then in terms of my meditation practice, what Reggie Ray really helped me do was drop out of my head into the body in a new way, in a really direct experiential way. And I realized in meditating with them that when I would feel into my body, it would often have the sense of, I'm here in my head looking down at my feet. I'm here in my head looking down at my hand. And I learned how to drop that center, where I center myself, actually into the body, that I could feel my feet from within the feet. And it's more direct and more experiential. And it's almost like as if my eyes have like dropped down. And that to me has been really powerful and potent. And it's helped kind of dissolve some of that duality, and that separation. And I think for me, if I'm honest, a lot of my meditation practice had a quality of disassociation and being in the body, coming back again and again, over and over, dropping into the body. It's that quality of separation has started, shifted and changed, and that's been huge.
I would say that I've had a very similar journey around all of that. That I think I also had a very dissociated meditation practice for a very long time. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. It's funny that I think, maybe it's guys like us or a lot of people in our culture right now require doing how many hundreds of hours of meditation practice to come back to the fact that we're mammals, mm-hmm. and that there's impulse and aliveness and just all of this vivid experience happening below our necks, It's like having to do a whole lot of complicated work to get to something very simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating. And then, what was your inspiration with becoming a therapist and becoming interested in psychedelics? Did it have like a big impact on you personally? Is that part of what inspired you?
Yeah, I'll try to give the short answer as much as possible. But I come from a family of therapists.
Oh yeah.
My father was an art therapist. My mom was a social worker. My stepfather is a Jungian analyst.
Wow.
So there's just a way in which that kind of language has always felt comfortable and familiar to me. And yeah, I found that I found myself called to study that kind of work. And I love talking with people. I find people's stories and who they are and growing to be just pretty much the most interesting thing. So, but yeah, it was through being introduced to psychedelics, and MDMA was really sort of my doorway into it. I dabbled with other things, of course, like most of us. But I had the good fortune to study somatic work when I was in grad school, and I remember going out to lunch one day with the person I was studying that from at the time. I said, "Hey, have you ever heard of MDMA?" It's like, the party drug, the stuff people take at raves. Yeah, why? It's like, well, I'm part of this research with it, and I've never seen anything like it before in terms of working with trauma, and I had no idea, So this was 12 years ago, I think.
Were they part of the MAPS research study?
They were, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, and so it was pure good fortune on my part, and so of course I was very interested. Like, well, what's this all about? And over some time, myself and some other colleagues started experimenting with it and running each other through these somatic protocols, and
with MDMA.
That's right.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
So is it the case that you came to psychedelics and MDMA later in your life then, when you were already on this path of becoming a therapist?
Yeah, I would say. I dabbled with psychedelics earlier, but it wasn't like a big thing for me, and and certainly didn't know anything about MDMA until after I was through graduate school.
That's so interesting. Different people have different life journeys and relationships with psychedelic medicines, and some people a lot of people kind of discover them or experiment a little bit when they're a teenager or undergrad. And some people keep going with that, and now that can become your career. You can really study that. You can become a psychedelic therapist, from whatever age you want to start doing that. But for I think for me and you, like, I also experimented some when I was younger. They had a big impact on me, but then I put them to the side for a long time. And I was really into meditation. And then later in my life, when I actually went to the MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies conference in Oakland in 2017, it was like it was a life-changing moment for me. It really opened up my eyes to all the research, all the excitement. And so that was like right at the cusp. Like I could feel this wave, like it was about to become much more mainstream. And it was coming out of the closet, so to speak. And that helped me to see the potential for working with people, and that it was becoming more open. And it also inspired me to have more experiences myself with them and really take it seriously as part of my path. Not that I hadn't taken it seriously before, but it gave me a certain permission to have more experiences with that, to dive in more deeper. And I'm grateful for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you, I also, meditation was my way in. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
did Dharma practice since I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and doing retreats was really important. And studying the Dharma was my path and sort of my way of self-exploration and, you know, in pursuit of the truth. And so when psychedelics came in, it to me, it always felt like this was a continuation of that. They've never felt separate to me. And this is where it's like, I've always thought of psychedelics as like being part, it's like having a psychedelic practice the same way one has a meditation practice. You know, it's like, this is an evolving process over time of coming to know oneself.
I like that. That's so helpful to share. I mean, the set and setting, a lot of people talk about that, the intention with which you're doing it obviously has a huge impact on the experience. And, you know, some people have the association of it more in the party context or in going to concerts. And I think there's room for both, but that certainly makes a huge difference if you set yourself up to go within and you're supported in that process and that journey.
Very much. And really, I think it just depends what you want, you know? Psychedelics at a concert can be great. It can be really overwhelming too for some people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm certainly not like a people should do it this way, you know, some psychedelic fundamentalist. But I think it just depends what people want.
Yeah. I have helped some people heal through trauma from psychedelic experiences at things like big parties or events where they felt overwhelmed and didn't have the tools or the support around them. And so that's a reality too.
You bet. It's really easy to get over your skis, so to speak, in that way, you know? Yeah, right. It's like, you can always take more, you can't take less, and easy to overdo it in certain circumstances. And if you don't have the tools or the help or the context to go through that, it can be pretty rough.
Yeah. I'm curious what you would say to the question of the path of meditation and the path of psychedelics and the differences there, how they could support each other.
Well, I would say that getting to know psilocybin was one of the most important parts of my meditation practice. You know, in the same way that Reggie Ray and somatic Dharma practice really helped me become embodied and have a sense of really moving the practice out of my head. I would say that psilocybin did basically the same thing and another deeper layer. And it introduced me to a direct experience of non-duality that I'd never come in contact with. You know, emptiness stopped being a conceptual thing. And there was direct experience. You know, the joke I like to make of this was that, I mean, gosh, I'd had a meditation practice for 15 years, I think, before I found psilocybin. And the joke is, you know, it's amazing that my spine was so straight. Well, my head was so far up my own ass in terms of what I thought my meditation practice was about.
Wow. So it really had a big impact, and it became experiential experience of emptiness, of non-duality, of non-conceptuality. Are those words land? Like, how would you speak to it?
They do. I mean, I think I have more words for it now than I did then, you know, but I would say that, you know, what the gift of psilocybin was, you know, a big dose of psilocybin, it forces your ego into a corner, I would say, you know, and that all the tricks, all the little strategies that we have for dealing with life and dealing with the intensity of experience, they just stop working. You know, I'd say that's the invitation of a bigger dose of mushrooms, or LSD, or a lot of things, you know. But that when you back your ego into a corner, you have two options really. It's let go or be dragged through it, you know. And, both can teach you a lot. One's a lot more fun, you know, but I would say the experience of learning what it is to let go at that level and to trust into the flow of experience has been one of the greatest teachers of my life.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think that's really helpful for people to hear and reflect on before they do, you know, a big dose, high dose psilocybin journey, for example. It's helpful to have a roadmap and some understandings, and just that piece around, you can either try your hardest to hold on, or you can let go and surrender, and you'll know when that moment comes, you know, and you know, it's just helpful to know that going into it, for sure.
Very much.
Yeah.
you know, and I think, you know, in my first experience of that, I remember, you know, surrender is a word we use a lot, and it's a really confusing word for people too. You know, I think surrender sounds passive, and the truth is that surrender is an invitation to just not be the one driving. It's like, get in the river. The river's going to take you. You don't have to move yourself down the river. So I think, you know, words that at this point that I prefer to surrender, that I think have a little bit more of a tactile quality to them, are trust. Like, how do you trust? Can you trust this? You know, can you? It's because trust can also be engaging, you know, and there can be a way of almost laboring with the experience. Surrender for a lot of us can imply a certain amount of passivity, whereas that really, I think the invitation is to see what wants to come through us in our impulse and in our aliveness when we just let go of the wheel and just let that much energy and life force move through us. It's almost like learning how to be uncivilized. We've been so overly civilized that there can be an uncivilizing for a period of time in which we're laboring with the aliveness that's coming through us.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, surrender, trust, letting go of control. The part of you that's always wanting to drive, always wanting you to control, is likely the part of you that's also getting in your own way, right? Creating obstacles, blockages, why you keep repeating the same things, you know.
That's it. Yeah. And we all have good reasons for doing it the way that we do it. And this is where, you know, I think psychedelic facilitation and where this intersects well with psychotherapy, is that the way that we clamp down on life coming through us, it is off for most of us, you know, has like a lot of historical roots. You know, it's like our character strategies are built around the ways in which we've had learned to sort of shrink ourselves in some little way to maximize the amount of love we could receive as kids.
Yeah.
You know, and so those, we come by it very honestly, you know, and so learning how to open around those is I think a wonderful path. And this is where I you know, have I roll my eyes a lot with how the research gets described in these things, because there can be a lot of focus around the big experience. And to me, it's so much more interesting to think of all of this as a process. It's a process of unburdening ourselves from ways in which we've compartmentalized ourselves, you know, and that maybe we have a big experience of freedom in a single session that changes us and we learn a lot, but maybe we don't. And maybe it's part of, you know, an ongoing process of learning about that. And to me, that's where this psychedelic practice becomes, this is a path. This is a path that you can engage in over time.
Yeah, I agree. I like that. It's a lifelong path, lifelong process, many different chapters, different places you can go and explore, things that you could be called to at different moments. I have worked with some people who have really, really wanted this big psychedelic experience, ego dissolution, connecting with God, oneness, non-duality, whatever they've read about or heard about, and they have some idea, and then they haven't had that experience, and then working with disappointment, criticism, and looking at that, what is that, and like, why are they, you know, what is this idea of what you're wanting? And there can be a lot of learning and growth from there. And then, you know, part of what I respect about psychedelics, it's not always good or bad, but it's the unpredictability. And you know, and no one can tell you what exactly will happen. You know, everyone's different. Everyone's in a different place, and the experience is always different.
Yeah, quite so. I mean, you know, I think it's wonderful to have an intention and a good hunch about where you're going, you know, and that I love Stan Grof's term. I think it's Stan Grof's term that psychedelics are a non-specific amplifier.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is Stan Grof. Yeah.
And so within that, anything can come up, and your nervous system has a better sense of its order of operations than you do. And so it's great to have a hunch of where you're going. And it's also, ultimately our job is to yield to the reality of what actually wants to unfold through us. And within that, I would say, though, that something I see a lot in the field is this idea of trust the medicine. And there's, I'd say, a really wise way of doing that. And I would say, to use a Buddhist term here, there's like a near enemy version of that as well. And that the wise version of that is that there's an emergence wanting to happen through you. And that's more important than your idea of what should happen here. That should be followed.
Yeah, follow that. Yeah.
The near enemy of this, I would say, is that that can also lead to a certain lack of discernment for practitioners. And what I see a lot in the field right now is a lot of just give somebody psychedelics, trust the medicine, they'll get better. And I think we can do better as a profession than that. And I would say that having a sense of what people want to work on and where they're at in their own development can really guide choice around dose, can guide choice around substance. And then there can be then more of a collaborative process around what's the material we're moving toward here. And if again, right, what's going to come up is going to come up. But, there's a certain amount of, we can more predict, like if you don't have an ego dissolving amount of whatever, right? If you keep it in more of a place where the ego is being softened, that sense of self is being softened and open, that's a realm where you can do really wonderful psychotherapeutic work with people. That gets a lot harder to do when the ego is dissolving. And that there's a different body of work or material to be encountering from that place. And it's more mystical or transpersonal. Many things can happen, but these are different territories.
Yeah. And is that like psycholytic versus psychedelic?
Very much.
Okay. So the psycholytic is a lighter dose where you're still able to talk, perhaps, able to think, able to have more of that sense of self or ego present versus a huge or large psychedelic dose, which might dissolve all of that. And that you could actually potentially do more traditional therapeutic healing work in that psycholytic space.
That's right.
And there's a danger of, or you tell me what you think, but it seems to me like there's a danger of a high dose psychedelic experience and that dissolution. It could be connection with God, oneness, ego death, all amazing, very worth having. But there could be a danger where you have that experience, but you haven't actually touched the issues or the traumas or the things that you might go to therapy for, or that in your day-to-day life are causing you problems. Very
much. Yeah, it's really well said. And, if we don't have more discernment around that in the field, I think what we risk having happen is that people are doing very expensive spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, that's definitely I think that's good. It's good to name that and just to know that going in and the check and be honest with yourself. Am I bypassing? And rather than making a big thing about it, just be honest with yourself. Like, are there issues that I'm not actually looking at or making progress with that are there?
Totally. And I think the truth is people don't know what they don't know. And that, like, unless you've studied a lot of this kind of stuff for a long time, it can be hard to know. And that the promise of a breakthrough is really seductive.
Yeah.
And it can also be incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
And so this is where, Ken Wilber's got this notion of the pre-trans fallacy. And it's a pretty simple concept, but it's one of the few things that it's so simple, but it's actually so deep. And I think it applies in so many ways in this field.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Do you want to share what that is, the pre-trans fallacy?
I'll do my best. Yeah. So, you can apply this in a lot of different ways, but that one way we can think about this is pre-personal, personal, and transpersonal.
Mm-hmm.
So pre-personal would be a baby, they're pre-personal in that there's not this like fully formed person, this ego. There's just like a mass of impulse and sensation, right? And the classic example in this is, a baby is enlightened. So like a baby is enlightened, or a dog is so enlightened. And because both a baby and a meditation master both seem very free, right? But they're very different.
I would hope so.
And
that's so funny. From a traditional Buddhist frame, that's like hilarious,
right?
And but it does speak to that quality of freedom. I think that's a good way to say it.
Yeah. And a baby goes from being an undifferentiated psyche into learning they're a person. They learn how to move into the world. There's sort of this process of ego development, which is incredibly important. And then from that place of developing a sense of will and agency and sovereignty, then from there's an opportunity for dissolving into something larger. Now, I think where the pre-trans fallacy is so useful here is that I would say that like the classic view of therapy, and obviously things are much more nuanced now than they used to be, but I would say like the classic view of like a Freudian psychoanalysis was that the only thing that exists is pre-personal to personal. And that any mystical state is going to get referred to as, oh, that's just a return to the womb. It's an infantile wish about returning to the oceanic experience of the womb, as opposed to a legitimate spiritual experience.
Right.
So they've got two sections of the three, pre-personal to personal. And then you have, something like maybe you could say New Age world, which has a sense of personal to transpersonal. And so anything that looks like freedom must be assumed to be highly spiritual. Right? Whereas it could be an example of dissolution into a greater field. It could also just be shitty behavior.
Could be an excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah, to act impulsively, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that just because something is free doesn't mean it's evolved.
Right. That's a good way to say it. Yeah, anyone who spends time in any kind of spiritual scene will see this kind of thing, where it's like, are you actually developing and evolving and getting to a deeper, more integrated, more nuanced understanding, or a genuine spiritual experience, which needs to include a sense of wisdom and compassion, at least from my point of view.
Right.
Or are you finding a place where you're experiencing freedom, but it's a kind of return to impulsivity, just following your desire in the moment, not aware of the wreckage you may be causing around you, or literally stepping on someone's toes at like a dance or something. Like, there's something a little bit off about that. We're like, okay, that they're not fully aware.
Right.
That can't possibly be what enlightenment is.
Right. Yeah, and I framed it as New Age, but you're right. I think you see this in basically any liberatory spiritual framing. Yeah,
and there can be so much freedom and life force energy and getting in touch with the younger parts of ourselves and being able to play again. And I think that can be beautiful, but it's good to make a distinction here.
It's incredibly important.
Yeah.
Being able to, bringing the younger parts of you along into your adultness is wonderful. It's a deeply important thing for us. This is sort of like, we got to be able to play and have that. It's also not enlightenment. Those are different. That's okay.
Yeah. Interesting. I like the word, makes me think about it being impulsive. And that tends to be more the younger parts of ourselves. Or, if you're a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, you're basically just operating on impulse all the time. And that's different than obviously using logic and reasoning to like find a better way forward and weigh pros and cons. And that might be more the personal realm. And then the transpersonal realm is really like, it's not impulsivity, but it's spontaneity.
Yes.
It's the Zen master who just does the thing in the moment.
That's it.
Without thought, but it's very different than a child acting impulsively.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and to do the psychological work of moving from impulsive to, we could say, disciplined, right? That's a work that I think of that as like, that creates maturity, right? And that the more that any of us can reclaim those younger parts of ourselves that got left behind because it was too painful to feel what we couldn't feel, the more that comes along with us, the more we live into our own chronological age and we stop being hijacked by these younger parts of us. That helps us be mature. It helps us actually be a grown-up. That's really important, you know? The spirituality, I think, helps us develop wisdom. And that if you're only developing maturity, you can be like a really responsive, good member of society. But internally, you might be a little boring.
Or rigid.
Yeah. You know,
it's limited.
You know, there's not a whole lot of what's this all about happening potentially.
Yeah, and I think someone who is really disciplined and really good at getting stuff done and being a responsible person and all that, there could actually be a lot of fear in them, like that rigidity, that need to control, and fear, like, well, because I'm working with someone right now who like has a lot of this, where they went through life, they always did the right thing. And they went to school, they were straight A's, they went to college, they went to grad school, they got a job, financially successful, the whole thing, own their own house. But they realized they were always sacrificing for this future. And they've been cut off from some of their life force energy and from what they actually want, what gives them pleasure, what lights them up. And so now they're really working to like find a new way and find that inspiration and excitement in themselves.
Yeah. And that's where I think psychology tends to have diminishing returns, and that turning towards something that helps us zoom out really helps.
Yeah. And perhaps psychedelics can be a doorway for some people. Maybe not for everyone, but it certainly has a lot of potential for that.
Sure.
So yeah, I think the Pre-Trans Fallacy is really important. I'm really glad you brought it up on the podcast here. It's credited to Ken Wilber, right? Philosopher.
I believe so. Yes. Yeah.
And it's a powerful framework. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, there's so many different directions we could go in. Like, how have you? Well, here's a question I had for you. If someone comes to you with a specific issue or problem, like maybe it's I don't know, it could be anything, but like maybe say the relationship with their mother or a traumatic experience they had when they were a teenager, and they want to have a psychedelic experience. They want to have psychedelic therapy to help them with this specific issue.
Yeah.
Would you, as a therapist in that psychedelic experience, bring that up to them, introduce it into the space? Or is there a risk of them having a really powerful psychedelic experience, but that particular issue doesn't actually come up at all and feels kind of untouched, even though they had a really powerful experience?
Well, it's a good question. I don't think about it in terms of a single psychedelic experience. I think about it as a body of work over time. And that if that's the thing in their life that's getting in the way, we can work toward addressing that. What that means, though, is that we're going to be doing psycholytic doses. So the point is not to dissolve beyond this, it's to open toward it. And from that, we're mostly working. Here's the thing. Psychedelic facilitation. It's easy to give people drugs. It's not that hard to set up a decent room and like be generally nice to someone and play mediocre spa music. These are not hard skills, and let them have an experience. That's an easy thing to teach and do. Being a good therapist is hard. So really, sometimes I think there's a lot of books out there right now are like psychedelics and somatics or psychedelics and IFS. And it's almost like psychedelics are the sriracha that we're putting on every meal. And sriracha is great. It's a great condiment. What's way harder is getting good at a modality. And so to me, the work of this is really about getting good at helping people navigate an experience through a certain frame.
Mm-hmm.
You can add psychedelics to that. And when you do, you have to, you usually have to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain adjustments you make to adding psychedelics to facilitation. But what we're doing is we're really doing good facilitating of experience. Psychedelics are the non-specific amplifier that are helping us have a more vivid experience to then chew on.
That's so interesting. Thanks for sharing that. It makes me imagine, I don't know what all the different psychedelic facilitator trainings are doing, but what would it be like to set up the entire psychedelic experience and hold space for someone without the substance? And could you still stay with them for 3 or 4 hours or however many hours and be a good therapist for them in that space? It seems like it'd be a good test.
Yeah, I think it's a little more boring for people.
It's
hard. It's hard to stay with. It's one of the things that I think makes psychedelics so great, is that it's such a vivid experience. You can't help but be invested in it.
Yeah, and I've been following you on Instagram and social media and appreciating your posts, and I see you stepping more in the space of actually teaching the facilitators, like sharing knowledge about how to become a more powerful, more effective psychedelic facilitator. What would you say, the part of the history of psychedelic therapy that isn't talked about so much is, in my understanding, especially a lot of the early research, the therapist or facilitator or spaceholder would sometimes take the medicine with the person, or sometimes take a small amount with them, like maybe a microdose when their person they're supporting takes a macrodose. Do you have any insights on that? I mean, it's a little bit taboo. I mean, it's certainly outside the realm of normal therapy where you shouldn't take any mind-altering substances.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly outside of the the scope of practice, we could say, of a licensed anything.
Right.
But I would say it's certainly not outside of the scope of a shamanic container.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't think we should be modeling ourselves off of shamanic practitioners because mostly because I think we don't have the worldview that supports it. We have 500 years of disconnect, at least 500 years since the Enlightenment, of disconnecting us from any sense of a living world. I mean, I think we can go back to the Christianized Romans, Greek philosophy initially, of all the ways in which we've civilizationally been disconnected from a living world that is speaking to us. So there's a huge chasm between, I would say, traditional shamanic practice and something that's more psychological in orientation. That's not to say that I think it's not worth apprenticing oneself toward and relearning that. And truth, and it's one of the things that I think I've seen the most change in over the last 10 years is the limitations of individual work seem to be getting revealed in different ways.
That's interesting. That we can't do everything just individually.
We can't, exactly.
Yeah.
That there's a collective process that needs to happen. Part of that is looking at trying to become well-adjusted and liberated while the world's falling apart and our government's on fire. There's a crazy mismatch. I would say that the best of social justice has been pointing us to that for 50 years. The other side of that, I would say, is that even the idea of an individual here, that what we're encountering is all about us and our process, is a deeply flawed idea of what we're actually up to.
Yeah.
And I would say it's really interesting, over the last 30 years, church attendance has dropped off significantly. These kind of religious institutions do not hold the kind of place in people's lives that they used to. And there's a great quote from Ian McGilchrist, who might be actually referring to Nietzsche. He says, when people stop Let me pull it up actually.
And say the name again, Ian
McGilchrist.
McGilchrist.
Yeah. When we decide to not to worship divinity, we do not stop worshiping. We merely find something else less worthy to worship.
Yeah.
And so this is where,
yeah, I like that.
The individual project of my healing, my liberation, my healing journey, we can kind of make a god of our own development. And
like an idol.
Yeah. And it's a spiritual cul-de-sac.
Very self-centered and self-absorbed, limited, thinking that it's all up to you or all dependent on you.
Yeah, or that you're the most interesting thing. And that our healing and our process is the end point of any of this work. It's the challenge of taking any of these liberatory processes and removing them from a tradition, is that they're removed of an ethical framework and there's any sense of responsibility to anyone else.
Well, that's fascinating. Yeah, one thing that came up for me when you were sharing was, and I get this would take some discipline and a developed mindfulness practice, meditation practice, but if you can notice your thoughts and then just kind of gently ask yourself, where does that thought come from? It really starts to dissolve the sense of ownership. Like so much of what we think and we believe, maybe 99% of it, I don't know, maybe all of it at times, it's conditioning. It's coming from other things. A lot of what I think, it's because I had a teacher say that. I read a book. I heard a podcast. Doesn't mean you can't have your own original synthesis or have your own original thoughts. But if you're able to really notice and be honest with your experience, like most of it, right, isn't original to you. And the same is true of anything else in your life. It's not really that original to you.
Yeah.
And whatever problems you have, there's a good chance there's a million other people that have basically the exact same problem, maybe 100 million, maybe a billion. Like we are all special and unique, and we're also not that special and unique.
Very much. And for any of us, there's sort of this move to make from, in the healing process for people that moves from life is happening to me, and, in therapy, we would call this an external locus of control, and from there's something really important that happens is people learn life is happening for me. And this is where I would say, a lot of the personal development world lives. Life is happening for me. You can start looking around the world and seeing, what does this have to do with my process? And that when you're moving from a place of I'm having to just deal with the hurricane of life and just get through it, it's a huge step forward in development to say, this is all for me. I can creatively engage with this.
It's a beautiful reframe. It's empowering.
Hugely.
Yeah.
It's a hugely important step. The problem is people stay there. And then you get really goofy situations where people start looking at anything in the world as if it has some message for them. It's not a problem to learn from that. It's a problem to think it's like metaphysically true. And I would say that it's like you get into these, you'll meet people that'll like, what does this class 5 hurricane mean about me? It's like that's not a great. That's a cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
And so this is when we have a view, when we have no larger framework to trust into in a path of growth, it's easy to get stuck there. And this is where having a bit more of a framework, like you and I grew up with or have spent a lot of time with Buddhism, I don't think Buddhism's special in this way. I'm just saying it's like it has a structure and a framework and an ethical body.
For sure.
And so from there, from this place of life is happening to me to life is happening for me, we can move on. And what I'm referencing here is a guy named Michael Beckwith. He has these 4 stages to life is happening through me, you know, and it's like, oh, I'm just part of this. There's a thing happening that I'm engaged with. And then his final step is life is happening as me. And that's a tricky thing to say, but I think of it as like as me in sort of like a non-dual way of all of this is life. And I'm part of that, you know, and that's where it's like, yeah, what does this class 5 hurricane have to teach me, or category 5 hurricane have to teach me? It's like, well, it's not about me, but there's maybe I need to, what would it even be? I don't know.
Like that you could also care about other people. You could show up for them. You could.
Great.
Yeah.
And that ultimately, you're part of life. You're not the center of life. And this is where this sort of gets us to sort of more of the worldview in which shamanic cultures, indigenous practice are already living in. There's a presupposition that they are part of a relational world and practice. Whereas that's a kind of an obscene level of achievement for a lot of us as Westerners who've had all of this brutalized out of us for centuries.
Interesting. Yeah, I really like what you shared about the living, breathing world. In the Buddhist language that Reggie was sharing, it's a sacred world.
A sacred world.
And it's relational. And yeah, you could ask what it means for me, and then also care about other people, of course. It makes me think of the metaphor of the waves in the ocean or the trees in the forest, right? And you can be a wave, and you can also have an experience of the ocean. And then at the end of the day, there's a lot of other waves on the ocean. And you're not necessarily better or worse than any of them, right? Like, you know, it's an interesting frame that I've been playing with recently. It's like, what would it be like to zoom out and look at life, whatever you're experiencing, other people, kind of like the way a biologist looks at like a group of monkeys. And we don't say there's a good monkey, there's a bad monkey, but we might notice, wow, that monkey is really aggressive, and this monkey is being more cooperative. And you know what I mean? It can be a helpful reframe to like look at ourselves in a more kind of objective kind of like we're life forms. We're moving through the planet, and get out of this like self-centeredness, making it all about you, or what is wrong with me that this is happening. Sometimes bad stuff happens, and it sucks, but that's reality.
Yeah, and there's I think what I'm connecting to in that is sort of the compassion that's available in zooming out into the mystery of it all.
Yeah, I think that quality of compassion is really, really important, and seeing clearly. And I think you're speaking to some traps in more New Age spirituality that are divorced from a particular tradition or ethical framework and can become very self-centered. And even if it seems to be working for you, I imagine like you're living in a smaller world that could feel like, you know, if you're making everything your fault or your responsibility, it's not accurate, and it's not going to make you feel a deep sense of peace and connection with everyone around you. Maybe another way to speak to it in Buddhist terms is like we have individual karma and we have collective karma, and there's all kinds of different karma happening, and it's not all, you know, up to you personally. You're not responsible for it all, but it's your job to respond to it as best you can.
Yeah, our responsibility for our life is always ours.
Yeah.
You know? The why of it all gets to really zoom out. You know, I think I have benefited a lot from the notion of interdependence. Right? And that it's like, if you really want to ask why about anything, you know, if you zoom out far enough to implicate all of the causes and conditions that are implicated, you'll arrive at the Big Bang. Christopher Wallace has a nice way of saying this in his book, Near Enemies of the Truth. It's like, why? Because everything else You know,
Oh, nice.
the reason why anything is because everything else.
Uh-huh. Yeah, if you go deep enough or far enough. Yeah, he's a great teacher, Christopher Wallace. I actually got to do a retreat with him a few years ago.
Oh, cool.
Really great teacher. Yeah, love that. But yeah, I'm curious to ask you more. I mean, as you've been helping teach more people in the art of psychedelic facilitation, like what are some things you're seeing? I mean, you spoke to it a little bit already, but anything you want to share that you're noticing in that space that you feel like people need to know or see?
Well, you know, like being a therapist, I think being a good psychedelic facilitator takes a lot of time. You know, and that there's really just you know, whatever medicine somebody's working with, it takes a long time to really learn how it moves in different people. And I would say that being able to discern, sometimes there are certain groups of people that need more and will benefit from having more because they have a really kind of dense ego structure. There are other people that if you give them more, they'll fragment and dissociate. And so it's really important to be able to clock the difference.
That's so important. I think that's a huge point.
Yeah.
Some, you know, the way I might speak to it is some people are already very open, and psychedelics tend to have this opening quality.
Yes.
And some people are very, you know, closed or more rigid or more dense.
Yeah.
They might need more, they might need higher doses, but someone who's already really open might not need it at all.
Totally.
Or a very light amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The metaphor I work with around this is I think of it as a vessel. You know, a vessel has two qualities, structural integrity and openness. And if a vessel is too open, liquid spills through it. If it's too closed, nothing gets in. And then sometimes a vessel can seem really solid, but the only thing holding it together, and when we say vessel here, I'm really talking about ego structure.
Yeah.
A vessel can seem solid, but really what it is it's only held together with rigidity. Think of it like a barrel. It's like this rickety barrel. It's just has these bands on it that are just cinching it down.
Right.
And that's an immense amount of pressure is the only thing holding it together.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor.
All three of those categories you should dose differently. And so being able to encounter that and be able to see who's sitting across from you and what they might be working with, that what expression of this they might be working with, and then being able to work with them accordingly.
Yeah, and be able to hold them in that space. Yeah. That's good. I like that. Yeah, you know, it brings me to this big question, and I get that it's a big question, but I think it'd be interesting to explore with you a little bit, which is basically like, what is a healthy ego? What is a healthy self? Some people in their spiritual path are really working hard to dissolve their ego or transcend it. Other people in our culture, like we were talking on the phone last week, I've had multiple people come to me and say something along the lines of, wow, I wish I was more narcissist, because that seems to be working for people in the world. And what they mean by that is, I wish I was more confident. I wish I believed in myself more. I wish I was more bold. I wish I had this unshakable conviction in what I could do so I could create more the life I want to live, or do better with dating, or do better in my career. But it's an interesting thing. And obviously we have a president who exhibits a lot of traits of narcissism. Another way to look at it is he has an incredibly strong ego. And there's something to be said for having a strong ego, like a healthy, strong ego. I'm not saying a president necessarily models that, but I'm saying it's a good question to look at. And I'm curious how you would respond to that.
Well, Robert Moore has a really nice answer for what a healthy ego is, which is somebody who can ask for help and knows their limitations.
Oh, I love the simplicity.
Yeah.
Ask for help and knows their limitations.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you have an inflated sense of yourself and you're, I don't know, say you're like on a raft boat escaping from a sinking ship, but you're not actually skilled at like navigating a boat, like you could end up, killing yourself and everyone else on the little boat. I don't know why that metaphor is coming to my mind, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean? Like you have a healthy sense of what you can actually do and what you can't do, and have some humility about it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I think about the vessel, right? What we pour into a vessel in this healing, facilitation context is experience. And so the right size vessel is a vessel that can receive experience and hold it, and so there's a certain amount of, can we meet what comes in a good way? I think when people say they wish they were more narcissistic, I think of that as being sort of someone who's probably more of a leaky vessel. And we can maybe say that in psychological terms of someone has a big history of fawning, or is maybe stuck in more of an immobilized, dissociated place in their life.
Right.
And what they see is people who are highly mobilized and riding full. And what they want more of that for themselves. That seems like a good thing to want for themselves, to feel like they were maybe less orienting toward other people's needs and more toward themselves. There's a healthy version of that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I like the way you said that. Yeah.
Our culture is so self-absorbed right now. I think there's a lot of really screwy messages.
Yeah.
And so, having more sort of public examples of not just people that are authorized to do whatever, but are in a state of consideration with what's around them. I think the question is like, how do we move an adolescent culture into one that has more grown-ups in it?
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
And that's a mix to me of wisdom and maturity.
And humility, right? Like a healthy humility.
You bet.
And the ability to recognize and apologize when you do something wrong.
Yeah.
Which is something I work with people on, and myself too. It's like not about a globalized, generalized apology for existing or for being a man or for being a human, but it's like, make it really specific. I did this thing and it caused harm, or it was, was off in some way, and apologize for that specific thing and learn and grow and move forward. And that is definitely not something we're seeing demonstrated on the national stage.
Certainly.
But to me, that's a key part of being a mature, compassionate human.
Yeah. And I think knowing one's limitations is, I was an asshole. I didn't mean, and I had a hard impact on you. Didn't realize, didn't mean to. It's like, yeah, it's a limit. It's okay to have been limited in what we could see of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's important that real narcissism is a pathology, and it's not something anyone would really consciously want or choose. It's not a happy place to be in certainly for anyone around that person. So, but some of the traits connected with narcissism, like confidence and a belief in yourself, there are certainly healthy, good versions of that. And I think we're speaking to that, but it's a bit of a nuanced thing. And part of what you were pointing to is that fawn response is a trauma response, and it could show up as people pleasing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that I think, when we see a lot of grandiosity, particularly in the spiritual world, I think what happens is that it's not that people didn't have some kind of legitimate spiritual experience. I think they did. But what happens is it's almost like that vessel, in order to accommodate the intensity of the experience they had, it had to expand. And when it expanded, it became rickety. And so it had to rigidify itself in order to handle it. And so I think in some ways it's like, when the personal wounds haven't been worked, we haven't learned to become more flexible, when we encounter something numinous or expansive, it becomes a new place to park our identity. the inflation that can come through spiritual practice. It's like a spiritualized ego that is trying to rigidify something that has no business. There's something that's very fluid and open that gets rigidified around.
Yeah, I agree. It seems to me that psychedelics in particular do have this danger of ego inflation and grandiosity in a negative sense.
Very much.
I've seen a lot of examples of that. Have you seen examples of that in your life?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That's a real danger. It's good to know about that.
Yeah, and this goes back to the pre-trans fallacy stuff, I think, which is that when people have painful experiences that they have not had the chance to or have not metabolized, digested, integrated, when they encounter bigger places, there's a way in which they get that part, the wounded part gets jettisoned for an identity of someone who's more free.
Yeah. I feel like maybe another way to say it is whether through the use of psychedelic medicine or meditation or some other path, someone could have a big experience, a big spiritual experience. And then later that becomes a memory and they identify with that memory.
Well said. And
they think it's like a possession, like they've got this much money in their bank account and they've got this spiritual experience in their ego identity bank account. And that actually wasn't happening in the actual moment of them having that experience, right? It wasn't an identity that they were holding on to and using to try to control people or feel powerful or feel special.
Yeah.
It was probably the opposite of that. Yeah. But later it gets twisted in that way.
Yeah, it's really well said. Or that, any kind of access to the openness and freedom of a spiritual state can then be used to learn how to circumvent what might be a legitimate wound that's being kicked up in a moment. So instead of feeling the vulnerability or the uneasiness of something in us that could just be tended in our own open field, we're using, that I can go to a more open place, or I can try and rigidify around something that feels more open spiritually so that I don't have to feel.
I don't have to feel, maybe avoiding feeling small or alone or powerless or anything. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's been great having you on the podcast. I wonder, do you have any examples from your own life or work around specifically with psychedelic therapy that you'd want to share? Like ways you've seen it help people or transform people, or maybe the opposite?
Well, over the years, I think I've seen it be useful in a number of different ways. And I would say that I've seen people go from being a doormat in their world, in their life, being this kind of overly permeable person, to being able to set good boundaries, and be able to really just make choices for themselves. And from there to open into spiritual or mystical territories where they're not the center, but they're open to something larger, and then that gets to move them. I've seen that arc a number of times with people. I would say that, it's like we could look at this. I could give you examples from more of a people healing their PTSD side of this, to people just learning to get their head out of their ass, like I did, like I had to, and maybe move from a more sort of rigid way of being into a way of attending to their life that's just more fluid and open. Where they can be more responsive to their spouse, to their children, more generous. All of it's possible, I would say. And I would say that these are people that have spent a lot of time doing a lot of work on themselves, and these are long bodies of work that can take years. And I mean, we're talking about. I don't like the idea that psychedelics fix people. I think, you always have to work out your liberation for yourself. I don't think anything's coming to save you. but that psychedelics can be a helpful tool to really see clearly or see vividly what's happening inside you, and then to also learn that quality of permeability of how is life happening through you and around you. To me, that's where it gets the most interesting these days. Is how do I learn to let the sound of the wind be more interesting than my thoughts? How do I listen to that better than my own thoughts? How do I join into the experience of all of this happening and let myself be moved and informed from there?
I love that. Yeah, I see you as a strong advocate for psychedelic medicines as an ally in this longer journey and path, rather than as like the answer or the idea that you'll have a single experience that will, save you or fix you or solve you, whatever problems you have. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Yeah. Beautiful. I like the metaphor of the vessel and having that healthy amount of flexibility and also strength, not too rigid. Like that, the barrel that's too tight is actually very fragile. Like a single knock from a hammer could shatter the whole thing. Versus the flexibility and permeability. Well, there's some ancient saying about like, be like the reed that can bend with the wind.
Yeah.
But then stands up straight, also. Yeah.
Right. That's balanced.
The balance. Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you. Great. Thanks for having me.